It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we move into a Monday. Gary, how are you?
Hanging in there.
Huh?
How's everybody else doing?
Huh?
It's great to be back.
It is.
Seems like I've been gone a year.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot going on. I mean, every day there was something.
Yeah, and I'll say this: if you want to encompass politically what happened over the last 10 days that we have been gone, it is exactly what we have seen before. Maybe because there's just the news cycle is so quick, and we weren't on the air every day because we were on vacation. It just seems like the Democrats, I'll call it hit and run politics, just hit with something, whether it's true or not, and when it's found not to be true, you just move on to the next thing.
Yeah,
and I think probably the biggest thing and the one that probably bothers people the most was their irresponsible reporting on the flash flood situation in Texas.
right.
The horrendous flash floods in the hill country of Texas, and first blaming the Trump Doge cuts.
Right.
Every single one of the accusations that were made have been debunked.
They're lies.
Yeah.
They're lies. They actually, forecasters started talking about the potential for what was going to happen eventually last Tuesday. And in the days and hours before, there were warnings that were issued by the National Weather Service. But the liberal activist media and Chris Murphy and all those on the left that want to, this is horrendous. We know a family who is dealing with the loss of their eight-year-old daughter. And I can't even imagine. I've never felt so helpless as things were playing out on Friday. It's and since, as we learn more and more about the victims and how this happened, I don't know what more warning signs could do in a situation like this. I don't know about, if they change in terms of, what we're going to allow in terms of the proximity to, a large river. But something like this, when it happens, is really unprecedented. When the Guadalupe reached outside of its banks because of the massive amounts of rain that just came down over Kerrville and just kept coming down. I don't know if there is, that kind of situation. I mean, they started with the, a few years back, they started using tornado sirens for high winds and other warnings. But even in a situation like that, on a river warning, because there are flash flood warnings, and there are also river flood warnings that come out. And a lot of people, if you're living in a major metro area, you see flash flood warnings, you pretty much understand what that means if you've ever been in an area that is flooded. You understand that water's rising very quickly. The river flood warnings often pertain to it pertains to areas outside of major metro areas. But you get into, when you look at what happened at Camp Mystic, I don't know if there is any amount of, you had, again, the forecast that was put out. They started talking about the potential for this massive, heavy rain last week.
Well, actually, Pete Delkus from WFAA here lined it all out as early as 6:10 Thursday. The special discussion issued. This is from the Weather Service concerning trends, flash flooding likely, rainfall rates higher than 3 inches per hour. Then at 1:06 a.m. Friday morning, flash flood warning for Kirk County. 2:28 a.m. flash flood communications. 3:02 a.m. These are all the things that they get in the weather. The National Weather Service mentioned a dangerous flash flood event unfolding in south central Kirk County. And he goes, one more data point. The flash flood warnings that were issued in advance were the type of warnings that activate FEMA's wireless emergency alert system and triggers cell phone alerts. While cell phone coverage is not great in that area, it's generally adequate, and the weather alerts were sent and should have been received.
Right. Also from WFAA, which is where Pete Delkus works, and from their website, meteorologists with the National Weather Service offices in San Antonio and Austin began highlighting the potential for flooding as early as Tuesday. By Thursday morning, the messaging had intensified, as you just mentioned, with forecasters warning of the increasing risk of flash flooding and river rises. So this liberal activist media and Chris Murphy and all the Democrats who are doing this, trying to make this political, because one of the reasons that a meteorologist like a Pete Delkus or any of them that do that for a living want to come out and set the record straight is because, quite frankly, meteorologists get a lot of blame for getting things wrong. But they rely heavily, of course, on the National Weather Service, and they know what the timeline was.
And as he wrote, according to Greg Waller, service coordinator hydrologist with the National Weather Service West Gulf River Forecast Center in Fort Worth, Texas, the National Weather Service forecasting offices were operating normally at the time of the disaster. We had adequate staffing. We had adequate technology.
Yep. At 1:18 Thursday is when the National Weather Service officially issued a flood watch that included Kirk County, highlighting the potential for up to 7 inches of rain.
The thing is, we have the, what do we call them now, severe storm sirens.
Right. Yeah,
used to be, every time I hear them, they test 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I forgot what day it is, but that's when I'll hear it. It's like,
I think it's the first Wednesday.
It's beautiful. It's sunny out, and you're like, okay, everything's fine. But when I hear it, I still think tornado, and now it's like, well, it might not be a tornado. But when you hear those, because my friends around the country saying, well, don't they have the sirens? I said, well, yeah, the sirens are all over the place. I don't know how they are in more rural areas. I said, but the thing is, when a siren goes off, your first instinct is to stay in.
Right, yeah.
Not leave, but stay in your house. And I said, but in this particular case, this happened middle of the morning, middle of the night. And so how many people had their cell phones on? How many people saw it? What was the warning? And the one video that I saw, and it had, you could see there was it's one where the state troopers actually taking a photo of it, where you see this riverbed. I don't know which river it was. I don't know if it was Guadalupe or another river, but you could see it was basically just a trickle of what it normally is, and all of a sudden you could see it almost didn't it look like a little bit like the tsunami?
Yeah. It looked like a mini, just a wall of water. Right. It just starts like a wave just of water coming.
But it only
down.
Looks like it's about a foot,
right?
And then but behind it, it's another foot, then another foot,
exactly.
And it just and that one video was amazing. The other one was somebody on a bridge like 30 feet above. I mean, you look down and you went, "There's no way."
Yeah.
And you see it coming, and all of a sudden, it just keeps getting higher and higher. Next thing you know, it's over the bridge. You're talking 30 feet in less than an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I built my house, I made sure that where I was, because it was 10 years ago right now, that we were really experiencing what they called it, the 1,000-year rainfall here, when my lake was 3 times its volume size. My lake went up 16 feet. Any more, and it would have actually flooded areas. It would have gone right over, they've got it set where it goes at 16 or 17, forgot what it is, feet.
After years of drought, by the way.
Right. After, exactly.
There was where my parents live, about 2 hours away from here. Their entire watershed was down below 19%. I mean, they had no water.
Well, and the one thing people don't understand about the state of Texas, unless you live here and you're familiar with it, all the lakes that exist, we've always said when you fly into Dallas and you see all these lakes around the airport, you're like, wow, I didn't know there were that many lakes. They're all man-made.
Mm-hmm.
Number one reason, flooding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're all designed to whatever their normal level is to take a ton more water, and then slowly in the Dallas area they all release it down the Trinity River, which goes all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
But it can take my lake, for example. It took, because then we had rain in between it. It took a full year to get it down to normal level, almost a full year. Mm-hmm. And it's that. But
a lot of lakes were closed for the longest time.
Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't. There was any recreation on those lakes was totally off limits because you just couldn't access it.
Because it's different from the place that I lived before I moved to Texas, which was Portland, Oregon, where it drizzles for 9 months.
Right.
I mean, you still get rain, but it just keeps raining and raining and raining and raining and raining. Mm-hmm. Here, it's seriously, you could look at the average weather in the state of Texas, and it's either drought or monsoons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's either drought or flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you don't get, sprinkles, because we did this weekend. Did you see how the high pressure system just kept forcing it? It kept coming closer to the Dallas area.
Oh, yeah.
Just just kept it in there, and it just kept recirculating down there.
Well, we were out on Thursday afternoon and Thursday night. We were out on the Gulf, and we were getting the tail end of that same system that basically was parked, the heaviest of it parked over Kerrville, Texas. But we were getting the south end of it. We were getting rain, and I remember looking on the radar because we weren't sure that we were going to be able to go out. We didn't know what the conditions were going to be, and ultimately we didn't get much. But knowing then we got back, when we got back, it was, I don't know, it was very late. And we were starting to get word of, how much rain was coming down. And then by morning, just the tragic stories that were coming out of how many were missing and what had happened and how it had risen. I remember, what was it, a few weeks ago, not too long ago, right here in this neighborhood, we had, I don't know, it was a few inches of rain. One local news station reported like 4 inches of rain within a 45-minute period. That was right here. And I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. And I've never seen that kind of flooding on the streets of this neighborhood. And we have a very good runoff system. It's usually it runs off and goes into, there's a couple of different creeks and waterways and drainages everywhere. But I remember driving in that night thinking, if I weren't in my truck, if I were in a normal car, I wouldn't have been able to pass through that area. In fact, one person lost their life trying to get through high water in another part of town, in another part of the Dallas area. And so, like you said, we've been known to get some very, very heavy rainfall very quickly, but especially down in central and South Texas, closer to the Gulf where that moisture is. But if you looked at that system, the way that was developing and the way they believed at that time, again, forecast as early as Tuesday that said there's potential for very, very heavy rainfall. One of the things is, because sometimes it doesn't occur, it doesn't actually happen, they'll say, look, coming up in a few days, we could get several inches of rain within whatever period, and they'll outline that in the forecast, and then it doesn't come to fruition. And I've seen, in fact, Pete Delkus respond to people when people say, well, we didn't get any. You shouldn't complain. If you're going through a drought, that's one thing, but you shouldn't complain that you didn't actually get the severe weather. That's not actually how any of that works. They're trying to warn you of the potential for that, and that's the frustrating part. Especially frustrating when they try and make it political, and they're taking, again, not just the National Weather Service here and those individuals that work hard at the National Weather Service and throwing them under the proverbial bus. But it's also meteorologists that are, especially in this specific area, that they're going after and trying and doing it for purely political reasons, all while you have dozens of families that now are suffering an unbearable loss.
And when they don't know the facts.
Exactly.
They don't know the facts. They're making crap up as they go along.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely
It
reprehensible.
just applies something that doesn't apply.
Not surprising, because they've been doing it for a significant period of time.
Yep.
But when you have the loss of life like you had here and the number of children that were killed in this, and to immediately jump on it without having the facts is just reprehensible. One of the other thing I want to bring up, did you see one of the, the rain radar maps of where the rain dropped?
Yeah.
And you looked at it and you're like, okay, there was that one spot where 21 inches of rain dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just a few miles, it was just, 3 or 4 inches.
Right.
And so to get that precisely in that particular area,
Yeah.
I would have to say is almost impossible.
Right.
To figure out.
Extremely rare.
Yeah, it's going to come somewhere. It's going to be in there. But to sit there and say in that particular section, 21
in terms
inches,
of forecasting.
right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
That's got to be almost impossible to do.
Sure.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. On a hot summer day, the last thing you want to feel is a blast of warm air when you turn on your air conditioning. A malfunctioning AC system will leave you uncomfortably shifting in your seat. Not to mention, it can affect the safety and performance of your entire vehicle and your productivity. Keep your AC system running smooth and your deliveries on schedule this summer with the following maintenance tip. Make sure the condenser on the front of your cab is clean, and double check that your compressor belt is tight and in good condition.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome, and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Yeah, just terrifying when we first heard about it on Friday, the flash floods in Texas. You knew it was going to be bad. When you saw the amount of rain, just a mile and a half from me, and this goes back probably 10, 12 years ago. There was a spot, I guess you'd say, in South Arlington, about a mile and a half by the way the crow flies from my house, and right off of 360, it cuts right between Fort Worth and Dallas. You take a side road, you go right down. There's a little valley that goes down a little stream, little bridge that crosses it, then it goes back up over. And I always thought to myself, I thought, wow, if there's a flash flood, that somebody could be wiped out. Guy tried to cross the bridge, got killed. Flash flood right there. And it's just, you've got to know, when you're dealing with, you live in an area where there's flash floods, when those warnings go out, you've got to heed them.
Yeah.
And people still, for some
reason. Even on major freeways, major highways, because
when people start going through the water, when it's flowing like that, you're just like, and that's where we've often talked about people not understanding physics. For example, if you understood physics, probably you wouldn't go 110 miles an hour on your motorcycle, in and out of traffic on a freeway. Or
like I saw numerous times over the break,
Or you wouldn't do it in your vehicle either.
Right.
People don't understand mass. They don't understand physics. They don't understand inertia. They just don't understand these things. And, I saw some of the RVs that wrapped around trees. You could not tell they were RVs.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
the
power of the water is just unbelievable.
They were stripped as if it was a Cat 5 tornado.
Yeah, yep.
Just unbelievable destruction and so much loss of life. Just terrible.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app, available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Well, I guess the breaking news from D.C. is the Department of Justice saying there's no Epstein client list, and he committed suicide,
Right,
without question.
Yeah, I mean, when the deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, said it, I don't know, that goes back a couple of months when he said, I've seen the footage, and there was definitely suicide. And now this coming out over the weekend, basically, which is the confirmation. There's no client list, that Epstein didn't keep a client list, because the story was, now, of course, I've also seen the response from those who adhered to the conspiracy theory, or whatever you want to call it, saying, well, that there's a client list when the DOJ comes out and says there's no client list. You're never going to win. And of course, that's going to be the case for anybody who's going to, buy into the conspiracy theory or whatever. Well, of course, they're not going to put they're not going to put the client list out because it would hurt government officials too, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Or the Clintons got to the shredder faster than Pam Bondi's Department of Justice.
Well, part of the problem is Bondi, a couple of months ago, stating that the list was on her desk.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't help.
Right.
And then the waving of the folders.
Yeah.
As we stated on that day, and
which
then
which was nothing. Everything they released on that day, there was nothing new. We didn't learn anything new on that day.
When you jump the gun and you imply something and then you back off on it, you're not going to win that.
And which is why, another reason why the conspiracy theorists are going to be out there going, now they're saying, at first they're pretending like there's this big deal. Now they're saying there's not. It's clearly a cover-up, blah, 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 blah. So, you haven't convinced any new people or any of the conspiracy theorists that anything is any different. And so basically nothing changes. But the question is, can we move on? Can we just move on?
I didn't even think that. I'm laughing because that's not what I expected the question was going to be.
Because the DOJ says there are not going to be any more charges related to the Epstein thing.
Right.
So let's move on. Nothing's going. It doesn't matter what you believe about the situation. Nothing else is going to come of it. So we have to move on. And, it's quite unfortunate for any of the victims that are involved here. It is extremely unfortunate.
I mean,
if there were crimes that were committed, and that if there were some kind of cover-up of crimes that were committed, then it's always, in any case, extremely unfortunate for the victims of such cases.
And this is what Bondi said a couple of months ago. Let's have this here. Here we go.
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
Yeah. Which, again, feeds the conspiracy theorists from the stuff over the weekend.
Well, know it before you go on in the media, know what the hell you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If it's true that there is no client list,
well, at the very least, if you're saying something sitting on your desk for review,
especially when
don't talk about it until you've reviewed it.
Right.
It's got to be reviewed first, and say, I'm not going to comment about what's on my desk right now. We're going to review everything, and we'll tell the American people when the time is appropriate. Don't promise something that's not there. That's a total Fox News moment.
Yeah.
and you don't need that. It's
because
totally
the question
unnecessary.
was on the client list. You've got the client list. It's sitting on
Well,
my desk.
it reminds me of the whole Sidney Powell thing and Giuliani. They made it sound like after the election on 2020 that, we've got proof. Well, you didn't have proof. You didn't show up with the proof. This is the problem, is that the messaging has to be on point every single time. And the messaging doesn't have to be, you don't have to go on with Bill Hemmer on Fox News and announce it before you reviewed it.
Well, she said that, and then remember the waving of the folders?
Mm-hmm.
We're waving the folders. We've got it. We've got it. We've got it. We've got it. And then you come back and say, there's absolutely nothing there.
Right.
What the hell's that about?
Right. Well, and it was weird smiles on that day while they were waving the folders.
Like,
too.
we've got it.
Well, it's like, because if you think, if an attorney general, a United States attorney general is waving a folder, man, that tells me a number of massive indictments.
Was she one of them waving? Was she?
I don't know if she was holding it up and waving it.
Yeah, I don't know if she was out.
Yeah.
One of them waving it.
But it's basically, the implication is that you're going to be indicting someone or a group of someone's. That indictments are coming down. That's the promise. Well, don't under-promise and or over-promise and under-deliver. You got to do just the opposite. You got to under-promise and over-deliver. But again, I don't know that it changes anything in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, it was given to influencers. When she announced the release of the document, the group included individuals like the libs of TikTok. They're all influencers. Rogan O'Hanley, DC Drano, Mike Cernovich, Liz Wheeler. They were the ones. She wasn't actually out waving it. So just wanted to make sure, because I thought it was all the influencers. But it was given to them.
Right.
It was given to them. Take the folder out and then wave it. You've got something.
Right. Yeah. Well, because again, the implication is that something's going to come of it. You've got to control your messaging, and that's a perfect example of how they didn't do that. It's up to them to control the messaging. Yeah. Here's what happened. Here's what didn't happen. Here's what we have. Here's what we don't have. The Axios story, talked about how they phrased it. I think it was when Bongino was an influencer before he became deputy director of the FBI. That they were among those in the MAGA world, who questioned the official version of how Epstein died. All right. Did they question it? Did any of them say specifically? I don't know. I didn't listen to every minute of Dan Bongino's show when he was on the air. Didn't follow every second of Kash Patel at the time either. Did they just question it, or did they actually come out and say, I don't believe he died of suicide? But they're saying, here's the evidence now. And it's nothing. He died of suicide. Bongino says, you can see it on the camera. He's the only one that comes in, and then you see them carry him out later. No one else went in there. It was suicide. There's zero evidence otherwise. But again, the conspiracy theorists are, now that's confirmation, is the government telling them that there's confirmation otherwise.
Well, you handed it to them by the way that you publicized it,
which gives the conspiracy theorists even more fire. See, they were telling us at first. They made us believe at first there was something there. Now they're covering it up.
And then it was the Department of Justice isn't getting isn't because the influencers were saying this afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Justice isn't getting the everything that they want from New York,
Right.
from the New York feds.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get it, then we'll have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I saw everything in recent hours I'm sure it was shredded already. I'm sure it was shredded long before Trump took office for a second term, blah, 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 blah.
And the reason is because Trump is on the list.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're not going to hear that for example, from the influencers from the right who are saying that there's a list out there and they believe there's a list. They're going to get to the bottom of it.
Even Elon Musk had to back away from that.
Yeah, but you're going to get you're going to get oh God,
The founder of the American Party.
You should call it America.
Yeah.
That's it. No, the making America greater than it is. Patriot, American, Constitutional, Declaration of Independence Party. Make it big. Make it a big name.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, first thing I thought was, so what you're saying is we need to cut the debt and subsidize green energy.
No, that's part of the big push by Elon.
I mean, that's what it.
Because one of the things he railed against on the big beautiful bill when it was passed, talking about that it is subsidizing energy of the past instead of the energy of the future.
Right. Well, you said it again when he just I think it might have been Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, that's
the 2 points that he brought up.
Yeah, that was part of that post.
We've got to get the deficit under control. We've got to get debt under control, and we have to subsidize green energy so China doesn't lead the world in it.
Right.
I don't know what to say. It's like you're contradicting your argument.
Well, again, I mean, it's exactly what we have talked about in the past of building the perfect unicorn. Does that sound like the Party of America? No, it sounds like another left party. It's what it sounds like to me. Because that's going to be one of the core tenets of if it ever gets off the ground, the American Party. And Elon Musk warning he's going to get involved in, funding other, putting money behind other candidates for primaries to primary against anybody who voted for this bill. Well, who are you going to get? The worst threat that it could possibly get, at the worst, would be a spoiler.
Yeah.
Being the spoiler.
You made a great point. It just reminded me too of what happened when on vacation, and I had to mute this because the guy was using the F word on X. Remember before we went on vacation, we were talking about who's the rising star for the Democrats, and I said Beto, and you said, oh, Beto was just in Fort Worth. And when he was, I didn't even hear about it. And I asked the question, how does he make his money? What does he do? So we looked it up, and I found out his net worth was like $5.5 million. It's like, how?
Yeah.
And
I talked about that when we were talking about the whole skateboarding it, because I think he got a Whataburger endorsement.
Right.
That's not true.
But we were talking about, who might be, and when we think about the American Party, the same thing, but somebody on X and doesn't use their real name. It was like, I don't know, Real Facts or something and it said, you guys have your effing priorities wrong. You're talking about Beto and his net worth instead of the debt.
Yeah.
You have your effing priorities wrong because we're the show that never talks about the debt.
We boycotted talking about the debt a long time ago.
Yes.
Anybody who listens knows.
Yes, because the debt will never be a problem.
Right. It's not a problem at all. Yeah, right. That's us.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. As always, coming up following the top of the hour, we'll try to review everything that happened, or as much as we can remember that happened last week. As we started the show out with, wow, it seems like we've been gone for a year.
Yeah,
so much
went on last week. It was just again another week in today's world. Really, think about it.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
We're the original American party.
Make it bigger sounding. Make America greater party.
Trump says he'll take a look at deporting Elon Musk. Man, that went so south so quickly.
Yeah, I did that.
It's like, holy cow. Next thing you know, he's going to come out with an executive order outlawing all electric vehicles. It just isn't enough popcorn for moments like this.
Well, when you look at the what did National Review call it? Let me just get it here very quickly. Trump's new budget law, very big, sometimes beautiful.
It's the bad light bill. When it's in the bad light, it's not so beautiful. Yeah.
It's well, it absolutely stinks. You know why?
Why?
I don't get nothing from it.
Now you get an expanded for what is it, 2 years? Expanded well, your age group. I don't know if you
I don't get in it.
Qualify it?
No. You got to be under 75,000 gross. What is it? Adjusted, whatever it is. Adjusted gross income.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not.
Well, you should get married to a poor person. Then you would qualify.
If I retired, maybe. If I retired and didn't touch my 401k,
right?
Because I don't have to for a couple more years,
right?
So if I retired, which I'm not,
no.
When does it go into effect? Is it for this year or next year? Is it? That's one thing I didn't look at.
I think it goes into effect for next year.
But
I don't think it applies to 25.
Yeah, so I didn't get
double check that.
I didn't get anything. I wanted mine. Everybody else got theirs. Why don't I get mine?
I didn't get anything.
Hey. We just want to be like everybody else.
Well,
I didn't get nothing out of the bill. It sucks. Where's mine? All I want is what's coming to me. All I want is my fair share.
Make some of America great again.
Make Eric and Gary less great.
Yeah. Too late. Yeah. It's. Sorry. Is it even possible? But yeah, it's a.
No, it does what I forgot who wrote it. It says, well, it's what Republicans have become known for. They give plenty of tax cuts and they keep the debt going.
Well,
it's
we don't have anyone. Again, a small group of us who are screaming about the national debt. It's a very small group.
And it's getting even smaller. Let me see. Here. Let's go to Chip Roy, who voted for the bill. All right.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congressman, a lot of Freedom Caucus members are saying they were no's yesterday firmly. Now they're yeses after they got agreements and assurances from President Trump. But nobody will say what those assurances are.
I'm not here telling all these guys that. I mean, we had very specific conversations about what the executive branch can do with respect to the Green New Scam subsidies. The fact that the Senate added an amendment at the tail end that gave us real concern and pause that we didn't think we could support. We believe the administration is aligned with us on.
I don't have to play anymore.
Well,
It went exactly like we thought it was going to go.
We said
we said they will crumble towards the side of having more debt.
Well, and when really, I mean, if you think about it, Chip Roy was the loudest voice during that whole thing before the original House vote, before the first time, which he also voted yes on. And so he's voted twice for it. And I said back then, I said, look, in the age of Doge, if it turns out that a very loud Chip Roy ends up voting for this thing, and he did, again, twice, and even after that, after the Senate added on, something that they thought was, they couldn't support, he still voted for it. Well, then this is exactly where we are as a nation.
Yeah, it's where the nation is, yeah.
There are, if you took a poll, do we need just a generic poll? Just a very generic, this would be an inexpensive poll to take. Do we need to do something about our national debt? Yes. It'd probably be one of those 80-20 things. Yes. Then you get down to it. Okay. Would you be willing to cut 15% across the board? No. Would you be willing to cut 1%? We're finding out. Right now, we found out the other day. Independence Day is the day he signed the bill into law. This is where we are as a nation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nobody complaining about it, really.
Independence, by the way, independence from, think about this, taxation without representation, but what are we doing here? When we're celebrating that independence, that's what we're celebrating, yet we're adding to the debt, which is going to be on the backs of individuals who haven't been born yet.
They're not represented. Well, I thought
taxation.
I thought the same thing when they
without representation.
Let's make a big to-do and sign it here on the 4th of July, Independence Day, independence. We need independence from Great Britain because why? Taxation without representation. Well, we are going to celebrate the fact that we now are still taxing without representation. We found the loophole. They're not born yet.
Yep.
Yay, we're great. We can spend money and give you tax cuts and put the debt on future generations. We are the Republican Party. This is a great, beautiful bill.
Well, and a number of the benefits that people are, the different group benefits that people are getting, these things are going to sunset.
Mm-hmm.
The expanded benefit for seniors, they say most seniors, collecting Social Security. I think what they meant to say is most seniors living on a fixed income below this certain level. When you get down to it, you have to. That's what you have to. And by the way, it's based on the expanded deduction for that age group,
6,000. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about Social Security. It's about fixed income and whatever that income level is. That's
Right.
what it's about.
Yeah, right.
And that took, by the way, a couple of critical thinking people in the media to point out this is actually what it is. It's not really Social Security tax cuts. That's not what this thing is about. And at the end of it all, it expires by the end of 28.
Now, the line of horse manure that came from Republicans, and you saw it over the weekend and from the administration, is we're going to have such great, incredible growth of 3% or more that we're going to be able to actually cut the deficit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you hear, well, the CBO always is wrong on their forecast. Well, guess what? So are the majority of White House predictions.
Exactly.
You and I have gone over that over the years. They way overestimate what they believe economic growth is going to be. So there's horse manure being flown from all sides, including the Democrats who say that we're cutting Medicaid. They're not cutting Medicaid.
No.
They're reducing the rate of growth of Medicaid and taking able-bodied people off it who
Right.
don't want to work.
Right. Exactly.
But this entire thing, again, but look, this is John McNamara right here. People want to be BS'd.
Well, no, they do.
We're kind of incredible economic growth, 3%. Remember, did you notice remember they were just saying about a month ago, remember with the 4.6% GDP growth we're going to have, and you and I went, where the hell are they coming up with that number?
Right.
And then we saw that it was we found out where it came from, and it was the Atlanta Fed GDP prediction, which went up to 4.6. Now it's down to 2.6.
Right.
And if you take, for example, well, let's put it this way. If you got the blue chip says 2.8, now their prediction was from the middle of June. I don't know what they would predict now. The next one from the Atlanta Fed is, I think, the 9th or the 7th. I forgot. It's coming up here. But if you take they were 2.8, the blue chips. If you take the Atlanta Fed 2.6, so make it 2.7. We had negative 5% growth, 0.5% growth in the first quarter. That means for the first half of the year, you have 1.1% growth.
Right.
Which
And
is
what-
three.
and
Which
what was the average over 20 years? What was it? 2.3.
2.3, right? And they're claiming that we're going to get 3%. The only way you can BS this is to overestimate what the revenues are going to be.
Right. And you can't go too big on it because then it looks too obvious. You can't go 9% GDP growth.
Well, they did say 4.6%, implying that's the kind of growth we're going to have. Just a month ago.
Sure.
Because you and I look at where are they coming up with that number? We had no
Right.
idea where they were coming up with that number from. And I think most estimates for growth for 2025 are between 2 and 2.5.
Yeah. And we'll see if we reach that. Yeah.
Well, it was the same thing with the employment numbers that came out. 147,000, I think it was, new jobs. This is great. 130,000 of those jobs are government or healthcare, which rely on what?
Government money.
Government spending. 80,000 of those jobs out of the 147,000 increase in state and local jobs. Manufacturing jobs. You notice they didn't say, you notice the administration didn't come out and say, because they were promoting, I just love the way they're promoting taxing the American public is a great way to raise revenue.
Right.
We're becoming rich. We're taxing the consumer. And I think they're up to what, $300 billion if it extrapolated what they got in the month of June of $300 billion. And we said, well, initially it was going to be $700 to $800 billion. Now it's down to $300 billion. The manufacturing, because that's what we're trying to do, rebuild the manufacturing base.
Right.
They did not talk about the fact that manufacturing was down in May 7,000 jobs.
Right.
So everybody, again, you accentuate the positive, you pick and choose. Everybody's cherry picking.
Sure.
The Democrats outright lying, though, on the whole thing of on Medicaid, though.
Right.
They're not lying. They're BSing by cherry picking. The administration is by cherry picking what is great for them and ignoring and not promoting what is not so great.
Right. Well, and look, the Truth Party, there's one you want to start.
Well,
you talk about unicorns.
That's impossible. You're not going to do
exactly.
that. No.
There's your unicorn right there. Because where do you even begin? I would start with, hello, my name is Eric Harley, founder of the Truth Party. We're all doomed. Every single one of us. I'm telling you the truth. In fact, I'm also going to tell you, don't vote for me because I don't want the job. Thank you. Good night. Don't even write me in. I don't even want write-in votes. It's because this is, again, where we are as a nation. John McNamara's applied to basically, I don't know, everybody. I heard an old guy on the radio just minutes ago complaining about him not getting his because he wanted to be BS'd about, being able to not tax Social Security.
Just so you know, employment losses in manufacturing overwhelmingly led by the machining sector. Lost 7,300 jobs, followed by losses in plastics and rubber, 1,700 jobs, paper manufacturing, 1,500 jobs, petroleum and coal products manufacturing, minus 1,000, furniture manufacturing, minus 1,000, semiconductors and other electronic components manufacturing, minus 900 jobs. Additional marginal losses were seen in additional sectors, including textile mills, apparel manufacturing, printing and support activities, electronic products, and non-metallic minerals.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Right.
You know what really was what led manufacturing, though, in job creation for June? What do you think? Plus 3,900 jobs. Food manufacturing.
Oh. All right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Owner-operator Mike Nichols is leased to Wayne Transports, pulling in their dry bulk division today after decades in business for himself. Speaking to Overdrive's Todd Dills recently, Nichols offered a word of advice to any company driver planning to make the switch to running as an owner-operator, unless you've got access to family money or otherwise independently wealthy, he noted.
As a company driver, you need to be thinking about startup capital and down payment, and I would just say that you need to treat that like you would firewood. Save what you think you might need and then triple it, if not quadruple it. And you'll be thankful that you did.
You'll be glad you did. That is, not just given favorable loan terms with a good down payment. Inevitably with trucking, you'll get hit with a breakdown and huge repair bill, or another of those unforeseen events. You'll need that reserve cash to cover it and avoid taking on debt or going out of business. Hear more from Overdrive's 2024 Trucker of the Year contenders at overdriveonline.com/PIB.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, I just, when you look at the big beautiful bill and everything, I just, it's something to look at. You had to get it passed. All right.
Well, we laid that out. With the GOP, there was no choice. You're in that corner of, look, you're not going to let taxes go back up. You're not going to let the SALT deduction cap go away. You're going to have to do it.
It's for me, it's what it's always been, the non-concern of the American public. The reason the Republicans can do this and Democrats can do it when they, when they went absolutely bonkers on borrowing money is the fact that the American public, for the most part, is okay with it. They say they're not because we all know it's bad, but they wish it wasn't. They don't want the debt, but they don't want the other alternative more.
Well,
which is at this moment they might feel the cuts that eventually have to happen.
Well, and Elon Musk in his mind has it, the other way around. He thinks he can form a new party out of, I don't know, again, who are you going to get? Who is it that's concerned about the national debt that's going to be this massive political party and movement that you're talking about?
That
time is over.
That also wants to fund green energy.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
right. Exactly. Sorry, it's not going to work.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. All right, sorry for the pause there. I'm not used to being on the air for a week.
Been a while.
I went, Didn't know where I was going. All right, talking about the big, sometimes beautiful bill that passed last week, the jobs numbers that came out, and more economic stuff. The one thing, and I'm not surprised by it because again, the administration's been all over the place when it comes to tariffs. But when it came out that they had, and I forgot what the actual number was. Was it 27 billion? I think they raised in June, something like that, 27, 28 billion. And they were promoting that as something great and incredible. And look at all this money coming into the federal coffers. And they said, see, people said that the critics said that the economy would be destroyed because of tariffs. Some people might have. What we have said is, and we stick by it because it's plain economics, and economics is never wrong. When you raise the cost of doing business, however you do it, you are not going to make an economy better. Now, if you're doing it to save a particular section of the economy that you believe is being hurt by unfair trade practices of other countries, China, for an example, you can use them, then explain it to the American people. But don't say the tariffs is going to bring you an incredibly, unbelievably great economy, because whether you increase the minimum wage drastically or if you increase the cost of doing business, no matter how you do it, it always has a negative effect.
Yeah, right.
And it's that simple. Now, the degree of the effect is how much the tax or the increase in the cost of doing business is.
Right.
If it's a little bit, it's only going to affect it a little bit. One of the reasons that we believe that Trump backed off on the massive tariffs was not because he has made great strides with China, but he understands the tariffs hurt an economy.
Yeah, I mean, it was, look.
It's why, by the way,
the alarms were sounded the night that it really was pointed out, I guess the day that it was pointed out, at the Treasury bill situation was in dire straits, that they were on the cusp of that going in a direction that they might not be able to pull it back from. And it was the following morning that he announced that they were basically going to go to 10% on most of the tariffs. And you look at the impact of that, it's because there's been a lot of, online analysis and social media people analyzing Who pays the cost? Well, ultimately, the consumer pays the cost. Now, the big box stores were very upfront. We can absorb this much for this long. This is what we can do to remain competitive. That's what you have to do. You know, there's a very real thing. People don't understand that in the retail sector, if you've never worked it, if you've never worked in the supply chain sector to the point of retail, you've got to understand there are certain neighborhoods, they know that a certain size of a product, like a family size, product, because of the price point, won't sell. And so in that store, right there at that particular location, they won't carry that size of product simply because of the price point, because it's above the price point for that neighborhood. It gets down very specific in the demographics and the income, but also the spending habits, not just the income, but the spending habits of each particular neighborhood. So these retailers have to work. This is what they do. The retail giants, especially the big box stores, they look at it and say, what is it that we can do to control the cost to remain competitive? It's not that they're politically trying to help anybody. They've got to compete. If it's Walmart, right now they're competing with Amazon. Amazon's competing with Walmart. And they're competing with also all of the other discount retailers that still have brick and mortar. These are the things they have to do every single day. So then it comes down to, okay, and this is what you heard from, I think, a couple of different CEOs over the last few weeks, and that is, well, at some point, we're going to have to raise these prices, especially for these goods. And the retailers are going, or the consumers at the retail level are going to see that. And that affects business. That affects, because we start looking at that saying, all right, well, I don't need to buy that item. I don't need to consume that item. Or if I want to consume that item, I can buy the smaller size. I can cut down on how much I'm going to consume, or I can go to the store brand and do away with the name brand expense. All of these things, and you never know what it's going to be. You never know exactly if you're at the retail level as a retailer. You never know. You can never predict. You can predict, all right, there will be a change. You don't know specifically what they're going to adapt to, what they're willing to give up, what they're not willing to give up, what they're willing to pay, and what they're not willing to pay. That's all plays out, and basically once it's behind you, you know. And that's changing a lot right now in the economy. You're seeing it. Because you go in and stopped at the store to buy some things on vacation, to stock up for meals while we were on vacation. And I actually had, because I have from this particular retailer, I actually have receipts. My receipts actually are stored online. And I looked, and it's considerably more for basically the same stuff. And I was looking at recent receipts and going back and looking at certain orders that I've made, and definitely you see a change. But the question is, does the administration believe on the tariff thing that they have found what I call the Laffer curve level, whatever that level would be on tariffs? Well, in recent days, again, they've been talking about, nope, more tariffs are coming. We'll see if that actually plays out.
But then again, they move back the deadline again.
Yep.
10 days ago,
Exactly.
Trump said everybody has to have a deal done by July 4th. That's been moved back to August 1st now.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, is because they know that when you increase the cost of doing business, there's one of three things, or a combination of the three, that can happen when you raise the cost of doing business. The price of the product goes up. The company eats it, which means they have less of a profit, which hurts the economy, or they lay off, or a combination of all of the above.
Yep.
And, and that's what you get. Now, depending on what it is, when you had a lot of people say when it was the 125% tariffs and the 50, 60, 70% tariffs, people saying, well, my gosh, it could destroy the economy. And yesterday or last week, you had the Trump surrogates out there saying, see, they said it was going to destroy the economy. Well, no, it all depends on what it is. And we believe that the administration's been trying to find, as we call it, the Laffer curve, the reverse Laffer curve, as we call it, sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is we want to find the tariffs that will, I'm not really sure what their goal is on it, that will bring in some revenue, but the tariff won't, because the purpose of first off, you have to tell us what the purpose of the tariff is.
Is it protectionism or is it to raise revenue for the government?
Or is it a combination of both?
Right.
And if it's a combination of both, what's the equation for that?
Right.
My fear is that Trump will want the win on the tariffs, which means a 10% tariff across the board, which all these countries can eat.
Mm-hmm.
All these countries can say, we can raise the cost and we can still beat what America produces.
Mm-hmm.
We can do it 10 or 20%.
Right.
Go ahead, put that tariff on. Americans are still going to buy our product. You're not going to get the jobs, and that's why I was wondering, did they know? Did they come out? Did they see last week the minus 7,000 in manufacturing jobs for June because they were promoting, look how much we're raising, look how much we're raising.
Right.
Yeah, but what you forgot was you lost. If you're going to go month by month, remember, they set the standard where we have a victory on the tariffs because we're raising this money this month, which is unprecedented, which shows all the critics were wrong while ignoring we lost 7,000 manufacturing jobs, especially when it comes to heavy manufacturing, machining, things like that, which the president has claimed, this is why I'm doing it all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you're not promoting that you're increasing the manufacturing sector drastically.
Right.
You're actually losing in the manufacturing sector, but you're promoting the fact that you're taxing the American people and American corporations billions of dollars as if that's a victory.
Right.
When you actually break it down, it doesn't make any sense because you sit there and you say, well, what's your goal then, Mr. President?
And when they will in the freight industry, manufacturing falls under freight, along with the movement of that freight, warehousing of that freight, and everything else. There was, in fact, one piece of information I was just reading during our vacation break that it was about a 5 or 6 week period, beginning of May to mid-June. There were nearly 10,000 jobs in the freight industry that went away. And that includes warehousing, manufacturing, trucking jobs that we have seen. Trucking's been in its own recession for longer than a minute. And you look at that, again, the movement of that freight and the storage of that freight, the manufacturing of those goods that become that freight. Those are very real scenarios that are going on right now. And that shows a real change in the consumption base.
Well, you saw that for the first time. UPS announced on Thursday buyouts for full-time truck drivers.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, because the movement of freight is changing drastically. There are a number of things that go into that. There have been the rates went through the floor when the Biden administration started ignoring the what they call non-domiciled CDL holders, and many of them from outside the U.S., where they come here, and part of the concern was they didn't speak or read English. Now, the administration just recently, the Trump administration recently reversed that and started enforcing that again, and that is changing things, and everyone is wondering if that's going to make the freight rates go up. But trucking has been hit very, very hard, but part of that is also manufacturing. Because if there is a drop in exports or imports, well, at some point that's all going to be on a truck. So it's not a good thing. It's not anything that you can sustain for a very long period of time. The question is, again, is that 10% sweet spot on the tariffs, is that where they've measured it and said, okay, we believe that can be absorbed by the economy?
But what's your goal with the 10%?
Right.
If it gets back to that,
Mm-hmm.
is your goal to tax the American public?
Right.
Because if it's not going to stop, if you're not going to produce everything in America, why do you have the tariff?
Right.
If it's not going to stop the imports.
Right.
The other thing Trump's getting hit on big time by the right is wanting to exempt illegal immigrants working in the hospitality industry and other industries.
Yeah, that's not going to fly very well.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Wow, did you see DeSantis saying we should abolish property taxes nationwide, and the president jumping on it, too?
Yeah.
Over the weekend, get rid of property tax.
Yeah,
well, that's
right.
a state thing, so if
Yeah.
DeSantis wishes to do it, fine. That's where I'm getting some relief. As an old man.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Is
we're
my-
getting
my
getting
property
better. We're
taxes.
getting more and more relief. Yeah, here in Texas. Love that.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. You know, something that I forgot where I read it the other day, and it's true. And it was a suggestion to the Republicans. You need to hit, now that the big, beautiful bill is passed, you need to hit Democrats over and over again for their lies on Medicaid.
Yeah.
Don't stop because the bill's passed now.
Right.
Don't stop and be on the offensive. Don't be on the defensive. Be on the offense.
Yep.
That's one of the good things in the bill.
Yep.
One of the beautiful things in the bill is it stops giving Medicaid to able-bodied young people that don't want to work.
Yeah, you don't. Again, it's something that the left has been really, really working at, is trying to dispel everything that's going on. We talked about the flooding in Texas and how the left is lying about they're trying to blame the Trump cuts for reductions in the ability of the National Weather Service. They made it up as they went along. They do this quite often, and the GOP needs to be out there. I think many did a great job at dispelling all of that stuff. But you're going to have to be, to your point, the GOP is going to have to be very proactive in going out saying, this is what we have done. This is what we have done. This is what we have done.
You have, in order to stop it, you have to overwhelm them with facts.
Yes.
For example, here we are. You and I took a week's vacation. No talk about Iran at all. None.
No.
Why? They were thoroughly defeated in any argument that they had.
Yep.
In fact, the only thing I saw when I was on vacation was the blasting of people like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon.
Yep. Yeah.
And that was coming from the right.
Mm-hmm.
That was coming from Republicans saying these guys were completely wrong on what they thought would happen.
Right.
Don't pay attention to them anymore.
Right.
But you saw the Democrats basically gave up. They were done.
Yep.
And the same thing here. Oh, I know. I found it here. Okay, I found the article. And it was the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. No one is gutting the safety net. The GOP will have to rebut the Democrat and media distortions about their reforms or lose the 2026 election.
Yeah.
Democrats and their media collaborators always distort GOP policy, but the coverage about the big budget bill has kicked free of the earth. Allow us to temper the histrionics about gutting the social safety net with a few facts about Medicaid, food stamp, and Republican priorities. By now, you've seen the headline in every outlet. The Republican law will soon toss millions from Medicaid and cut the program to the bone. But the annual spending on the health entitlement will grow over the next decade, even with the bill's roughly $1 trillion in estimated savings. Medicaid spending has risen roughly 60%. Think about that, since 2019. And the bill's intent is to try to bend Medicaid's trajectory closer to the bad old days of 2020.
Yeah.
Democrats and some Republicans had offered cynical distortions that pregnant women in poverty and disabled children will suffer. But Republicans are trying to address the program's enormous Obamacare expansion to prime-age adults above the poverty line and note the details of those who will allegedly lose coverage. The CBO, in a letter last month about the House bill, said, listen to this, said 4.8 million will not comply with the bill's part-time work requirement. This should be a warning about the country's social condition. The work requirement doesn't apply to anyone who is disabled, pregnant, or caring for a child younger than age 14. Volunteering 20 hours a week or enrolled in school, you can get Medicaid. Don't buy the Democratic talking point that the working poor will be lost in red tape as they try to prove they're on the job. States have handled work requirements and food stamps and cash assistance for decades. As a Foundation for Government Accountability notes, when Arkansas experimented with such requirements in Medicaid, enrollees only had to report work once, and it was easy to do so. The state cross-referenced wage and employment data, and folks could also self-attest online or call a hotline. The Democratic position is that Medicaid should be a free, universal benefit for men who refuse to work. The other major provision is tamping down state scams to hoover up more federal dollars. The main losers here are large hospital systems that have been doing well on this. The GOP bill includes sensible measures such as asking states to check their Medicaid expansion rolls every 6 months and more scrutiny on Obamacare subsidies. This is necessary because the Biden administration waved millions into health entitlements. The Paragon Institute estimates that 6.4 million people are enrolled in fully subsidized Obamacare plans, but don't meet the eligibility criteria. Apparently, this is what Democrats support. The bill's changes to food stamps are also modest and rooted in the tenet that work is central to upward mobility. As a refresher, the program currently requires able-bodied adults without dependents to work about 20 hours a week or lose the benefits after 3 months. That 90-day dispensation allows those who suffer a setback time to get back on their feet. But here is the not at all radical reform proposition. More of those who rely on benefits for longer need to be working. The The GOP bill would expand the current work requirement to cover more able-bodied adults, including some parents with older children in school and those in their 50s and early 60s. The law tries to tighten up waivers that states have abused to eliminate work rules. The other major change is asking states with high improper payment rates to have skin in the game and pick up a share of the benefit costs, which are currently billed 100% to the federal taxpayer. These are common sense ideas that have public support, though most voters are not hearing a defense from Republicans. This is why you go on the offensive. Do not wait to go on defense. Come out bluntly.
Yep.
Like you had many people come out about the lies of the flash flooding in Texas and go after them first. Don't wait to be on the defense. Go and attack and tell the American people that the Democrats wish to take your money and give it to able-bodied people who don't want to work.
Right.
Over and over and over again. Don't stop and call them liars to their face.
Yep.
Don't say misinformation.
Yep.
Don't say they have it wrong. Be blunt. They're lying about it. There are great parts to this bill that move the country in the right direction, not nearly as far as it needs to go, but at least they're taking the things that they know the American public will agree with, and that's what they put in the bill when it came to stopping benefits going to people who just won't work.
Yep.
And that's the thing. And I can understand the frustration of the Wall Street Journal. I feel the same frustration. If you're doing something in a bill that the American people love, and they're for it, and it's landslide, promote the damn thing.
Yeah. Well, again, and after it's passed, after it's been put into law, you need to promote the good things, that the benefits that basically you were promoting beforehand. You know, I think a lot of it gets lost in the back and forth, especially when after it goes from the House over to the Senate. Well, the Senate changes it, and then blah, 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 blah. We don't like messy. And then they pass it. And I think a lot of people tune out. So if you've done something, if you've achieved something, an accomplishment, you need to go on tour with it.
Well, the evidence that you can win is Iran and the flash floods.
Yeah. Yeah.
That quickly, as they all pounded on it. And if you pound on it in unison and you mark it, however you did it, you did it on Iran because you kept talking about it over and over and over again. And when it succeeded, you showed the evidence for it. All you have to do here, you don't need to talk about the benefits. That part, the people already know. They're going to know if they get the benefit on it. Mm-hmm. What you need to promote is where the Democrats stand on giving your hard-earned tax dollars to people who don't want to work at all.
Right.
They don't want to work.
Right.
And they want your money to take care of them. You don't think that that's an 80-20 issue? It's only not an 80-20 issue if 50% of the people are taking advantage of it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly.
And they're not to that extent.
No, and again, it gets down to being able to, well, quite frankly, if you want to call it your victory lap, that's one thing. But if you've accomplished something and it was part of your campaign promise, it's part of, again, getting the job done, you're going to have to get out there and getting the job done. You're going to have to promote that because this is going to have to work at the midterms. Much to the dismay of Elon Musk, he can spend his money wherever he wants to spend his money. You're not going to get by with forming a party that's, first tenet is about, solving the national debt crisis, and then one of your other tenets is about supporting green energy with government money. It's not going to work. How you don't see that is beyond me. Make America green again. The other MAGA. No?
Oh,
no, it's not going to work.
I love it. Make America green again.
It's not going to work. I mean, it's what are you trying to find? The fiscal conservative AOC? I don't know who it is you're trying to find. That's why I started. The first thing is, well, we're going to start the American Party. With who?
Oh, it's the Al Gore party.
Oh, yeah.
That we need to spend your taxpayer dollars on green energy that is not consistent and can't make a profit, yet we'll put Social Security in a lockbox.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And we take Social Security and put it in a lockbox.
Yeah.
God, that was so dumb.
In a lockbox.
Yeah, okay, you got to say it.
We're gonna put it in a lockbox.
Yes. In your Al Gore Dr. Phil voice.
He's a slower Dr. Phil. If you think about Al Gore, he's like a slow Dr. Phil.
A little bit higher in the octave.
He's less smart than Dr. Phil and probably lies more, especially about ethanol.
By the way, I catch Dr. Phil talking about, things that I'm interested in. It's like, but he'll, especially on social media, why we need to stop this and economically why we need to do this and why this is wrong here. And then I happen to go by his show on vacation. Let's talk to the woman who's had every man she's ever dated cheat on her. No. And I go, oh, that's right. I forgot where you came from.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually your roots.
Right. Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. Coming up here, our media update.
Yeah.
The media and Mr. Mamdani. Boy,
wow.
That just wasn't that fun to watch when you were on vacation and read all the stuff on there.
Right.
Jonathan Turley just went nuts on the New York Times struggles to explain why it reported news to traumatized readers. We'll get to it coming up far on the bottom of the hour, but this week the New York Times experienced an uprising in its ranks and among its readers. The paper was denounced by its own staff and liberal pundits, called for the entire editorial staff to be canned. Why? Because the New York Times actually reported news that was deemed harmful to the Democrats, specifically mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. The newspaper took the additional step of publishing a cringing explanation of why it reported the news that Mamdani lied on his Columbia application in claiming to be black. For liberals, it was an utter nightmare. For a party still defined by identity politics, Mamdani's false claim over his race left many uncertain of how to react. The left has always maintained a high degree of tolerance for false claims by its own leaders, from Senator Elizabeth Warren claiming to be a Native American to Senator Richard Blumenthal claiming to have served in the Vietnam War. But it's just how the readers and the comments and the editorial staff all going crazy. You cannot tell the truth. Don't you? The readers understand that the New York Times is a bunch of political activists.
Right.
They don't want journalism.
Right.
Oh, man, but I'm telling you, the commie, traitor to our country. By the way, thank you to the person who earlier, one of our listeners, who posted when I said, all I want is my fair share. All I want is what's coming to me. All I want is my fair share, and realized that was from Charlie Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Just like commie, traitor to our country is from Seinfeld.
Yes.
Mickey.
Right.
Who was an elf for Santa.
Right.
Who was Kramer.
And now it's...
No. The kids screamed.
Right.
The kids could not Mickey. The kids screamed at Kramer, commie, traitor to our country.
Well, and now it's commie, Mamdani for mayor.
I like that. Commie, Mamdani for... All right, we're sticking with that till November.
That's going to be the chant.
You're going to get sick of it.
Commie, Mamdani for mayor. Commie, Mamdani for mayor. Make it happen, people. Come on. Come on, start the chant. We can do this.
I like it. Commie, Mamdani for mayor.
Yeah. Look, promote it. Own it.
We'll get to, and plus another one, too, about how they reported the entire University of Pennsylvania, the Thomas story.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, right.
He goes, if you read it, you don't know that he's a he.
Right.
Because they still use the proper pronouns to describe it.
Right.
And it's like, so they're not telling you the truth.
Right, exactly.
They're telling you the story, but you go by, you go, I don't know what the story means.
Exactly.
Hilarious stuff coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Time for our commie, Mamdani for mayor. Can't we get Pinko in there somewhere? Pinko. But,
commie, Pinko Mamdani. Commie, Pinko Mamdani.
We're reading this from jonathanturley.org.
Yeah.
New York Times struggles to explain why it reported news to traumatized readers. and this is where they reported on the news that Mamdani lied on his Columbia application in claiming to be black.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And I love this here.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when a news echo chamber for many readers is shattered by an errant outbreak of journalism. Many times readers live within a hermetically sealed news silo, relying on MSNBC for cable, the New York Times for print, and Blue Sky for social media. You can literally go all day without being exposed to an opposing view or fact. Then suddenly this happens. The result is often anger. It is the same response many in higher education have to triggering views being expressed on campus by conservative or libertarian speakers. The fact is that the Mamdani story was obviously news and confirmed by the candidate himself. Mamdani identified as both Asian and African American on his 2009 Columbia University application, according to the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
Some accused him of being a fraud. I just, look, they need to go back to Obama for this. Obama led on this. Race is a social construct.
Mm-hmm.
Some accused him of being a fraud, while others suggested he was trying to abuse affirmative action. The Times reported, adding, Columbia, like many elite universities, used a race-conscious affirmative action admissions program at the time. Reporting that his race was black or African American in addition to Asian could have given him an advantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
In an interview on Thursday, Mr. Mamdani, 33 years of age, said he does not consider himself black or African American, but rather an American who was born in Africa. He said his answers on the college application were an attempt to represent his complex background, given the limited choices before him, not to gain an upper hand in admissions process. Quote, he was not accepted at Columbia. Other candidates like Mayor Eric Adams went after Mamdani, and the matter has now become an issue in the mayoral election. The Times readers were outraged to the point that the paper published a lengthy statement from the Times assistant managing editor for Standards and Trust, Patrick Healy, attempting to explain why it decided to publish facts that undermine a Democratic candidate. Healy sheepishly explained, when we hear anything of news value, we try to confirm it through direct sources. Mr. Mamdani confirmed this information in the interview with the Times. It did not help. Much like the infamous Tom Cotton scandal, remember that?
Yeah.
Where editors were fired for allowing a Republican senator to print an opposing view on riots. Writers and pundits demanded firings or attacked the journalist.
Yeah.
One such response, or a political activist.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
One such response came from a Times columnist who attacked the journalists themselves. Not surprisingly, the attack appropriately came on Blue Sky, a social media site designed to be a safe place for liberals who do not want to be triggered by opposing views. The columnist slammed the Times reporter as stupid, claiming, everything I've seen about him screams a guy with little or no actual brain activity. After the outrageous attack, the columnist deleted the post, explaining, I deleted several posts about a Times story because they violated the Times social media standards. Oh, my gosh. It's just so funny. You can't print the truth. I did see a couple of articles about Blue Sky. Well, you heard that, J.D. Vance got on it, right?
Yeah.
Apparently just triggered he did it on purpose just to trigger them.
Right.
Just to
Yeah.
have them go crazy.
Right.
But think about this, where if you go on X, and there seems to be more liberals on X now, you definitely more liberals on X, because you could see that they were all jumping on to attack the Trump administration for the flash floods here in Texas. So you know they're there. That's the if you want to know the difference between conservatives and liberals, liberals want no opposition. Conservatives crave for the opposition to speak. We want the opposition to speak. Our survival depends on the opposition speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me, not our survival. Our entertainment survival.
Well, isn't entertainment survival all about survival?
That's true. Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the pursuit of happiness.
Right,
Which
exactly.
means entertainment is happiness.
Right,
For us.
exactly.
Yeah, okay, right.
Right.
Yes.
It's the American way.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, just.
Yeah. Well, and they really don't know where to go. The Mamdani thing, it really did seem to kind of, I don't know that I can use the word implode, but it was kind of like an implosion, right? It's like they were trying to build something up while it was imploding. That's really what it was, because we talked about before we left. We talked about how it really is. And by the way, thank you to the great Dan Mandis for filling in, being here all week. Some great compliments for Dan as always. and he's just a total trooper. The guy never. I don't know. I don't think he ever sleeps. I think he's like Trump. He gets 45 minutes a day. I think that's all he needs. But thank you to Dan Mandis. We greatly appreciate the job that he did.
Absolutely.
While he was filling in for us. And, before we left, we talked about the Mamdani thing and the rock star thing, because we brought up Beto. We said, okay, when was the last rock star they really tried to, as a party, they tried to create? Now, AOC has created a rock star in herself. She thinks she's a rock star. She gets out there and jumps around on a stage. By the way, is that aerobics? When she's jumping around, what is the craze there with the getting out there and in the campaign mode and jumping around on stage? I would think she would be more fit if she did that more often. But this whole idea of creating a rock star, and the part, and actually those two thoughts go together. With the new movement on the left, they're creating their own rock stardom in and of themselves. They Jasmine Crockett, AOC, they all want to be the rock star, but it's only in their mind that they're the rock star. The party can't really create a rock star anymore. So it was like it kept going last week with Mamdani, almost like you could tell, oh, man, they would really want this to be the guy. But he can't be the guy. Because so many things are bad. So many things are wrong. And, look, not that Adams is a great candidate. And you saw the pressures on Cuomo because he's going to be the spoiler. He's going to help get Mamdani.
I saw it both on Sliwa.
Yeah.
Sliwa, you got to get out. Then
Right.
Cuomo, you got to get out.
Right, yeah.
Both of you got to get out.
Yeah. Everybody out. Yeah. It's really.
Well, if you're left with Adams and Kami, here comes Mamdani.
Yeah.
Adams looks like a great candidate.
No, that's my whole point. I don't think he's a great candidate, but by comparison, the day that he launched, basically, I mean, it was the kind of the launch of his ads and everything else. Adams was holding up. I think it was the New York Post. He was holding up the picture of Mamdani on the front of the New York Post. And he's just got the biggest Adams, this big smile on his face. And I thought, he's going to use that, of course, as he should, as all of them should. The question is, where does the voter go? What's going to happen here long term? You and I suspected when the other night when it fell out and Mamdani won. It's like, okay, but in the big race, now, because I suspected that day, even some people who voted for him were just learning about his socialist values.
Oh, you know what I saw when I was on vacation? A number of publications giving the example that I gave just because I remember, because I'm from there, and it was a story, and I pay attention to the news of what goes on in Buffalo. They went back to the election a couple of years ago in the primary where the socialist won, and it was a socialist.
Yeah.
And everybody, all of a sudden, every Democrat became a capitalist conservative. And,
right.
And the Democratic incumbent won. But as I've said, he wasn't an insane, like, for example, during the riots of 2020, they went after anybody who destroyed anything.
Right.
So he's a far-left Democrat, but he wasn't insane, and so they put him back in. But it was like the entire community, corporate, everything, all the money went against the socialists. Now, that was in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about New York City. It's going to be interesting, but I mean, it was, golly, some of the comments. Not a socialist, or not a communist, just a socialist with communist leanings.
Democratic socialist.
Democratic socialist. It's a democratic. He's a Democrat He's a democratic commie. He's a fascist democratic commie.
He's the kind of
Social.
commie you vote for.
He's the kind of commie that will make communism correct, because the problem with communism is it actually works if you have the right people implementing it.
Make America communist again. Macca. Yeah.
It had to be New York City, though. It had to be,
Well, no.
I mean, it just
It's
just
actually
fits,
perfect.
It fits. It is
It's
perfect.
it's
It really
perfect.
is. It's karma.
Yeah, no, I forget who wrote it.
It's
at
reverse
National Review.
Bizarro karma.
I forget who wrote it at National Review. All right, this is what New Yorkers chose, and if they choose this for mayor, let them. Like we've been saying, go do your little experiment.
Well, it's
Those government grocery stores are going to be perfect.
It's like I've been seeing over the when I was on vacation. I saw a number of people with the red and blue maps.
Yeah.
The blue states need to stop sending all their money. All their money needs to stop going to Washington, D.C., because California gets less and a lot of the red states get more than they put in. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, right.
I'm absolutely fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
All the blue states and all the red states, stop sending 99% of the money that you send to Washington, D.C. Leave Washington with 1% and let all the states deal with their own business.
Right. Yep.
Since Democrats have given us that choice last week, you see those maps all over the place last week?
Yeah.
I'm like, let's go for it. It's like they don't even know what they're saying. It's like, no. Go ahead. Go do it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Have your little experiment.
Right. Let's have Democrats are screaming for I was going to say MAGA, but mega federalism.
Yep. Let's do it.
Let's go for it.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. And, talking about the New York Times there and Jonathan Turley writing on his own website about the New York Times having to explain to their readers why they told the truth. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Another one coming up, how the mainstream media, how they covered the whole University of Pennsylvania Leah Thomas story. This is just great.
Yeah.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. Good morning. Well, this ought to blow this conspiracy theory on the Epstein, the no Epstein list.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Kirk wrote it. If Trump was on the Epstein list, why didn't Biden release that info to stop Trump from being president?
Well, that was the thing that everybody talked about when Elon came out and posted it. I was like, if that were the case, then Biden and Biden's people would have never held on to that. They would have released that. You know? So, it's kind of, again, the hype about nothing.
Well, it was really, it goes back to Bondi when she was asked a specific questions we played earlier from Fox News about the list, and she said, I have it on my desk. Now, she didn't say the list. Maybe she wasn't listening to the question that was asked, but clearly that was the message that she said, that she communicated, and the whole folder thing with the new information and everything else.
Yeah, the binders that were being held up.
That the influencers all had and were waving to the press that added to it. And then it comes back, nope, sorry, there's no list, nothing there.
And they were at the White House, to be clear. Those influencers were standing at the White House when they did that.
Yes.
They were given to them at the White House.
So it's really not, I don't, all the attacks I've seen have come from the right.
Yeah.
On the administration on this.
Right, yeah.
You know, the same thing, even though it's been tempered down by the time we got to the weekend, but last week it popped up a bunch of times on social media about Trump saying, well, you know, we have to give a break to illegal immigrants that work in the hospitality. What was the other one? Hospitality and what? And farming.
Yeah, farming.
Hospitality and farming.
Yeah.
I forgot whether it was National Reviewer said, no, what are you talking about? And it was a bunch of people saying, you notice Stephen Miller's quiet on this one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And it was like, wait a minute, now you're picking and choosing the illegal immigrants who can stay?
Right. Well, and, you know, again, it's not it's not one that you want to promote. It's you can talk about at some point. I don't know that we're there yet. But if you want to talk about changing the work visa program, you know, then you can have that conversation. But I don't even think you're there yet. I don't think even that is up for discussion at this point.
No, the American, the American public, excuse me here, the American public just isn't there because of illegal immigration. Trump was there a long time ago. People forget about it when
he had talking about it for years.
Yeah, when he had the debate back and forth, and what's his name? Gosh, I forgot his name already. Got kicked out from CNN. Jim Acosta. That whole conversation was where he said, "You're saying immigrants. I say illegal immigrants. I want legal immigrants here. We're going to need them for all the jobs we're going to produce." And he didn't get any blowback for that at all back then. And when he came out with it a couple weeks ago, where he first hinted that, no, I think that hospitality and farmers and businesses that have long used, communicating that businesses that have long used illegal immigrants, it would be too much of a stress on them to deport them. That's where you had a lot of people in his base go, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Where's this coming from? Now you're picking and choosing what illegal immigrants get to stay. Isn't that what Democrats do? And all of a sudden, it's like everybody went quiet on it then by the time we got it. Probably by the week. Well, but when the big, beautiful bill passed, and that sort of dominated everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Point.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I mean, it's been the news items have been the flash flood and the reality of it, and then the politics of it. But we'll get to more of all that coming up. But I just saw that from Charlie Kirk, so I had wait a minute. Trump can't be on the list. Biden would have used it against him, and the response would be, I can't debate that one. You're right.
Yeah.
Biden would have used it, or Harris would have used it.
Right.
But talking about our media coverage, but media coverage out there, an epidemic of media doublespeak, and this was all on the University of Pennsylvania, where because of the push from the Department of Justice and everybody else came out and said Leah Thomas is going to be, his medals will be stripped from him, whatever. But this is the coverage of the story, and it's an epidemic of doublespeak, media doublespeak, and nowhere is the problem more severe than in the coverage of trans athletes. And perhaps more than ever, this is the case when a mountain of euphemistic slop and doublespeak was dumped on news consumers, all to promote narratives rather than simply telling a story. Because what's happening here? What's the story? The story was University of Pennsylvania announced that the school was stripping Leah Thomas, a man who claims to be a woman, of his titles in swimming, and had issued an apology for the female athletes that he defeated. Right?
Yep.
That's the story. Here's how they covered it. And they write here, Beckett Adams from National Review, our esteemed press remained dedicated to the use of Thomas's preferred pronouns, thereby confusing the reasons behind the university's actions. Quote, Axios, UPenn will strip a trans swimmer, Leah Thomas, of her records and ban trans athletes in women's sports. The obvious drawback to the press's partisan language policing is never clear when it tries to cover trans issues. Sharp, concise, accurate news reporting goes out the window. Entire stories become undersold or hopelessly muddled. The whole controversy over Leah Thomas revolves around the fact that he is a man. He is a man competing against a woman. Without context, readers have no better understanding of Penn's actions than they did before reading the Axios headline. All we know is it's something happening involving women's sports and women with qualifiers in their titles. We've reached a point where to understand the news, one must at all times keep on one person a cheat sheet to determine whether a trans man is a woman to a man or a man to a woman, and whether a trans woman is a woman to a man or a man to a woman. Forbes wrote this. The University of Pennsylvania came to an agreement with the Trump administration that will strip transgender swimmer Leah Thomas of her titles and recognitions and ban trans athletes from women's sports. The University of Pennsylvania, on Tuesday, the Associated Press wrote, on Tuesday modified a trio of school records set by a transgender swimmer, Leah Thomas, and said it would apologize to female athletes disadvantaged by her participation on the women's swimming team. Wow. New York Times. Penn revokes Leah Thomas's records, bans trans athletes under the Trump administration deal, the New York Times declared in a misleading headline. Only men are prohibited from participating in women's sports. Women who identify as men are still permitted to compete and train in men's sports. By the way, women who don't identify as men are still permitted to compete and train in a men's sport if they can make the team.
Mm-hmm.
The headline is not the worst of it. The body of the story is likewise a mess of confusing pronoun usage, all of it undercutting what should be clarity and consistency. The Times wrote, since its return to power, the Trump administration has maintained that transgender people should not be able to compete in sports alongside women. The reality is the Trump administration maintains that men should not be able to compete in women's sports. So there you go. I mean, it just continues with all the headlines where you read it, and if you're not paying attention, you're like, I don't know what this means.
Yeah, you're confused.
Yeah. That's what political activists do.
Yep.
Instead of just telling you the story.
Well, when you can change the definition of words, that's what they're doing. They're lying by using the wrong words.
Then they get to the body of the story for the New York Times. Listen to this one. The Trump White House argues transgender people hold a biological advantage over cisgender women.
Wow.
And that their presence in locker rooms and other private facility poses safety concerns, the report reads. Say that again. The Trump White House argues transgender people hold a biological advantage over cisgender women.
Wow.
I wonder how many people know what a cisgender woman is.
No, again, you change the language.
If you ask the question, what's the difference between a woman and a cisgender woman?
Right. Oh, no, they're not going to be able to tell you. A liberal activist would tell you.
Well,
and that's it.
Well, actually, the reality is there's no difference.
Well, the fact is,
cisgender woman means you're a woman who's a woman.
Well, if you're saying the person is a woman, to me, then
you're a woman.
They're a female woman, as in a woman, as in a woman.
Along with a cheat sheet, you'll also need a decoder ring to understand stories that employs different tiers to refer to women and women.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
women, and women.
Or we could speak plain, clear English and refer to people by the pronouns that reflect their sex, thus sidestepping the completely nonsensical and inherently inconsistent Calvin Ball identity game. Clearly, this is asking too much. The insistence on using preferred pronouns in a story about men being banned from competing in women's sports benefits only radical fringe gender ideologies. It does nothing to clarify for the public what the issue is or why Thomas has been stripped of his titles. A news report that can't even distinguish between the players in its own story is not just bad journalism, it's also bad writing. No, it's political activism is what it is.
That's what it is at its core.
Right. They know what they're doing.
Well, yeah, again, you change the language. They believe they still control the language. And, of course, on their own turf, they do. That's why they write it that way. They're activists. Control the language, and you're controlling more than half the battle.
We've caught Fox News doing the same thing.
Yep.
Let's be intellectually honest.
Oh, yeah.
Fox News has done the same thing.
Right.
Fox News will do a story on a man who believes that he is a woman, and in the story they'll say the transgender woman, she. No, it's he.
Right.
It's a man.
Right.
Because the whole debate is about, should men compete against women?
Right.
Should biological men compete against biological women? Not what you think you are. It should biological men compete against biological women.
Right. And the moment you're using that language,
yep,
then you're part of what the left is doing,
right,
what the activists are doing.
Right. Fox does the same thing.
Yep.
When they do a story. I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if they're still doing it. I'll see if I want to make sure I haven't read their story on this. I'll see if they're still doing this as of late last week. Because in the conservative media falls into the same trap. And occasionally I've done it by mistake.
Well, if we're reading an article that has it,
right,
especially,
right.
that's what you have to look out for.
Right. Yeah. That's probably when I've been caught. When I'm caught. like
Aha!
It's probably when I've most of the time have done it.
Yeah.
But no. I said if somebody wishes to change their name, Leah, that's fine. I think his name was originally William. Johnny Cash taught me that one. So
right.
I'll call you by your name, but
I have a buddy whose name is Beth, and I've teased him all of his life. But he goes by his middle name, Shirley. So,
see, I always thought that when I was young, I hated my name Gary. I thought it was a very effeminate name.
Yeah, I still think that. Yeah.
I wanted to be Bob or Jim.
Bob or Jim.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah, right.
Why can't I be Bob or Jim? Right. Gary.
Right. But not Bobby, though.
But you know where that came from?
Huh.
That came from my brother and Dave Sublotny across the street.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Saying to me, Gary with the cute little dimples and the curly Q in his hair.
Right. Yeah.
I tell you, man, I was full of rage when they did that.
Right.
866-90, that was last week. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Once a roadside inspection is completed, the officer will close it out, which involves the officer writing or typing up the report. The more the officer found during the inspection, the longer this will take. If violations were discovered, most officers, as a courtesy, will explain the violations to the driver. If there were any out-of-service violations, the officer will normally explain what must be done to get the out-of-service order lifted. Drivers need to be very attentive during this part of the inspection. The driver also needs to read and understand the complete inspection report. After receiving the inspection report, the driver has 24 hours to get the roadside inspection report to the motor carrier. If the driver will not be returning to a company facility within the next 24 hours, the driver needs to know to get it on the way to you via email, mail, or fax within 24 hours. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I was going just through some of the Fox News headlines, and this story is on the front page. Man buys a locked mini fridge after food thefts, gets called weird and selfish by coworkers. Thank you, Fox News. I needed to know that one.
Yeah.
As I was looking, I just started looking for the to see their story to see if they use the liberal pronouns for Leah Thomas. Mm-hmm. I'll continue my search after I read that story about the guy in his mini fridge at work.
Yeah, of course.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, so I'm reading the article. Okay, I said in the past I have read Fox News articles where they used the liberal pronoun for transgender people or athletes. Not once did they use it they didn't use any pronoun in the article.
Right.
Always referred to Leah Thomas as Thomas.
Oh.
Never used. Okay, no, it's okay. This is when I'm reading the article. I saw her, but it's referring to the swimmer who was the biological female who had to be next to the biological male in the locker room, and saying how upset she was, at that.
Yeah.
And that, they wouldn't do anything. And they talked about how the school said, you do this, you're going to be labeled as transphobic. You'll never be able to get a job.
Right.
Wow. It still amazes me how, you and I talked about this, and we said a decade ago, we said with the radical transgender movement, it will kill feminism.
Yep.
It'll kill liberal feminism.
Yep.
And it did. Completely destroyed it. It's gone. There is no liberal feminism today.
No.
And they crumbled. They completely crumbled, so the male will get his way.
That's it.
Because the man said so. Liberal feminism said, that's right. The man says he can be a woman, so we don't have to have vaginas anymore.
Well, remember the Women's March? What did that last?
1
2
year.
years?
I think it was 1 year, because the second year is when some showed up in the pink hats, which represented the vagina.
Yeah, the second year they were done.
Yeah, and then there was the big split between the old school feminist and the new school feminist.
Right.
Well, what are the new school feminists? We're feminist. We defend all women, including men.
Well, what does the world what does the world come to when you can't wear a vagina hat at a women's march? Just what has it come to? That's what I want to know. Because that's not what it was like when I was a kid. You could totally wear one to a women's march. Not these days, though. No sirree. I'm sorry. No, ma'am.
Oh, my gosh. Oh.
That's what it came down to. The second year.
Now, at the recent No Kings protest,
no crowns.
Were you not allowed to wear a queen's crown either?
Well, I don't know. No crowns. No king's protest. By the way,
weren't they supposed to have it on the 4th?
I thought they were going to.
What happened to it?
I don't know. By the way, it turns out Prince Harry thought that was all about him. No, it's not about you, dude. Yeah, it's it really, watching the left over and over again. Someone needs to write the book. The thing is it would have to be like a Time Life series of books. You know what I mean? The kind our parents used to subscribe to, because you would just have to keep it going. You know, of all the implosions every time they try and launch something these days. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in the New York City mayoral election. But given the weird kind of implosion as they're trying to, at the same time they're trying to build up Mamdani as a rock star in New York, is just bizarre. And the thing is, it really isn't coming from the right.
No, it's not. We're just sitting back. It's must-see TV.
No, it is. It really is. You know, it's
because the mainstream media is not paying attention to Curtis Sliwa.
No.
They're just it's Cuomo and Adams.
Right. That's really what it's about, and whether or not, I guess, Cuomo will stay in. You know, because Cuomo's being told now, well, you're the spoiler. If you stay in, Mamdani's going to win. We'll see.
Is communist the new N-word?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Mamdani is becoming, his name is becoming one that is just, it's, I don't know how you get so much baggage so quickly. I don't think I've ever seen that much. And
he's great.
He's not like, Hillary, who must be what, in her 90s by now? He's not that old.
And then the news from yesterday, New York City mayoral frontrunner Mamdani's professor father claimed Hitler was inspired by Abraham Lincoln.
Oh. Just keeps getting worse. Just keeps getting worse.
New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani's father, a longtime academic and Ivy League professor, said during a 2022 panel discussion about one of his many books that Adolf Hitler drew his inspiration for the Holocaust from Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
The younger Mamdani, a self-proclaimed socialist, whoa, commie.
Right.
Commie, traitor to our country. Pinko.
Exactly. Commie, Mayor Mamdani. Start the chant, people. Come on. Start the chant. Well, it's, again, there's so much baggage that's piling on so quickly. It's like, wow. You're never going to get through the airport with that. That's not gonna fly. And it's once again because the left takes off on it. This is where it goes. It makes you want to stop and just take the average. If you could find the average rank and file left voter, just and I don't mean moderate in terms of average. I don't mean moderate. I mean rank and file, active, also activist. What is it? How do you think all this works? What is going through your brain?
We just want to give some advice here to Elon Musk. We know that you're not looking for a presidential candidate yet for your American party. You're looking first for the midterm election. Mm-hmm. We would suggest that even though commie, here comes Mamdani, will say that, yes, he believes there should be more subsidies for green energy. Don't believe him if he says he wants to balance the budget.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, again, I don't know who you get.
You made a great comment. I know we're changing the topic here, but why not? It's our show. Because we've been talking about a bunch of different things, but you were saying that, because I just mentioned Elon Musk, you're saying you think that some of the influencers that really are behind Trump are really being soft on
Elon.
On Elon because he might throttle them.
Well,
on X.
because you're on X. And if you're, I don't know how many of them are monetizing. I have to believe a number of them are. At the very least, your goal eventually would be to have a following that would be at the level of monetization that you would want to monetize. Mm-hmm. And I know that some of them are. But there seems to be this slowing of and kind of this neutral position of, because you got to pick a side. You're either MAGA or you're Elon, because there's no both anymore. And saying, well, you agree with both probably isn't going to get you there. But it seems that a number of them are, and I'm just scrolling through, and it's anecdotal, but it would make sense that a number of them would look at this and go, well, at least while I'm here, I should just, not try and make Elon mad. Do my best not to go after Elon. I frankly don't care. I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm not trying to be something. I'm not trying to monetize on social media. I've said it for a long time. Twitter, or now X, isn't real life. It's not how actual people communicate. Is there a benefit to being on it?
Oh, yeah.
Based on my job, yes.
Yeah, great benefit, yeah.
If I were no longer doing this job, no.
I just wonder because, again, when I first saw his first post, where he talked about the American Party and he talked about the things he disagreed with the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Which was that China's going to beat us on green energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to subsidize it, and then we need to balance the budget. I went, I don't know what conservative you're talking to out there, because you can't have one and have the other.
Yeah, is that the AOC conservative crowd that's clearly much bigger than I thought it was? Because that's what you're trying to push. The whole green energy thing for people, if you're a fiscal conservative, you're looking at green energy in terms of government dollars going into green energy. You're looking at that as a big, big part of the problem. That's what we have been railing against for a long time, throwing money down the toilet. How many green energy companies that have gone under after getting the money?
I think the real thing is if he decides to go forward with this, we'll see what happens. Who is the first candidate that he will endorse?
That again
will say it all.
Right. Who are you going to get? Which is what, I started earlier. Who are you going to get?
Right.
Who are you looking, and what will that person promote? And the American Party. All right, now you're going to have to go through all the states, right? Go through all the states. You got to start. The party has to be based in all the states. Then it's got to catch fire. You've got to have that kind of support, that kind of money. Well, my gosh. If you want to just pour, speaking of green energy, if you want to just pour money down the drain, sorry, there's not going to be this massive movement. I don't care what you call it. You can call it the American Party. You can call it, whatever you want.
Making America greater than great party.
Right.
Patriot, constitutionalist.
Right.
Whatever. I'm more patriotic than you are.
Yes.
It's still not going to work. You know, the thing is, when I first saw it and when he said, when we'll be looking for candidates, I don't know why, but the first candidates, because I said, who would the first candidates be? All I thought was Liz Cheney and Adam Kissinger.
Well, right.
I don't know why, but those are the first two people that popped into my mind. Like, who's going to jump on board?
Well, that's it. Who wants to be the first? Because where do you go? If you do this, then you're not MAGA.
No.
And if you're not MAGA, remember, we're talking midterms. We're inside of 6 months away from that.
Yeah. From it getting serious, yeah.
So
yeah.
you've got to turn against MAGA and get a large following. Good luck.
And for president in 2028, let's see how close I am.
Yeah.
I have the candidate.
Yeah.
John Kasich.
Well, his father was a mailman, so there's that. I guess you start with that.
Well, no, he can say, I'm the one. I am the one that got you. I crunched the numbers for Newt Gingrich's budget.
Yeah.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Sarah Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. I'm still laughing from when I said, I know who the presidential candidate's going to be for the American Party. I went John Kasich, and you went, and then I said, well, because remember, he's the one that crunched the numbers for Newt Gingrich's budget, and underneath you were like,
well, that's when I went, because Newt Gingrich, you mean Nancy Pelosi's friend? Good luck.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.